You were told to be kind. You were conditioned to think that kindness is always the answer. Smile at everyone, never argue, never confront, never say no. Somewhere along the way, you began to confuse kindness with approval. You thought kindness meant accepting every behavior, tolerating every attitude, absorbing every insult, and still showing up with a smile. But deep within your soul, you started to feel it something was off. Something was breaking. Something was not aligned. And that's where the truth begins. That's where the message starts. Islam teaches kindness, not blindness. Islam commands mercy, not naivety. Islam emphasizes love, not weakness. When Allah tells you to be merciful, He never says to lower your dignity. When He asks you to forgive, He does not tell you to keep placing yourself in harm's way. When the Prophet Muhammad embodied kindness, he also showed courage, justice, firmness, and wisdom. Now thinking, who was the most kind-hearted man to walk this earth? N. Who cried for his people? The Prophet N. Who prayed night after night for their guidance? The Prophet N. But also, who stood firm when truth was attacked? The Prophet N. Who turned his face from those who mocked the message? The Prophet N. Who stood up to the Quraysh leaders, rejecting their bribes, their threats, their pressure? It was that same Prophet who was both soft and strong, both kind and clear. And that is the model. That is the balance Islam teaches us. That is the essence of real, powerful, divine kindness. You see, we live in a world now where kindness is weaponized. You're told, if you're really good, you'll just agree. If you really care, you'll stay silent. If you're truly spiritual, you'll tolerate it. And slowly, piece by piece, you begin to shrink. You begin to compromise. You begin to betray your own values, all in the name of kindness. That's not Islam. That's not Deen. It's that moment when that's truth. Allah created you with a heart, yes. But He also gave you intellect. He gave you fitra. He gave you a compass that can distinguish between what's right and what's manipulation. The Prophet didn't allow people to cross boundaries repeatedly and say, let me be kind again. No, He drew lines. He addressed behavior, He corrected actions. He forgave, but He didn't ignore. He was soft in tone, but firm in truth. Some people will use your goodness against you. They'll test how much they can take, how far they can push. And the more you bend in the name of kindness, the more they will break you. Then when you're shattered, they'll move on. Because they were never looking for your kindness, only your compliance. There's a term in Islam, adl, justice. Without justice, there can be no true mercy. And without boundaries, there can be no sincere kindness. Imagine a parent who keeps giving candy to their child because they don't want to hurt their feelings. That's not kindness. That's neglect in disguise. Real love tells the child, no, this is not good for you. Real love enforces rules. Real love disappoints people temporarily to protect them eternally. Why don't we apply this to ourselves? Why do you feel guilty when you say no? Why do you keep justifying the harm others cause you? Why do you think Islam wants you to suffer in silence? It doesn't. Islam wants you to rise. Let's get very clear here. Islam is not about pleasing people. It's not about earning approval. It's not about being liked by everyone. In fact, Allah tells us clearly in the Quran, if you obey most of those upon the earth, they will lead you away from the path of Allah. Surah Al-An'am 6:16, that means doing what's right will often make you unpopular. And you know what? That's okay. Because Allah never asked you to be accepted by the crowd. He asked you to be loyal to Him. When you let people disrespect you repeatedly and call it kindness, it's that moment when you're not helping them. You're enabling them. And you're not helping yourself. You're destroying your own self-worth. Every time you say, it's okay, when it's not, your soul gets weaker. Every time you ignore red flags because you don't want to hurt them, you hurt yourself. Every time you make excuses for their toxic behavior, you're abandoning your own emotional safety. Kindness without boundaries is a betrayal of your soul. When you let me remind you of a story that the Prophet once gave a very powerful, very revealing lesson. He said, the believer is not stung from the same hole twice. Bukhari in Muslim, what does that mean? It means, yes, we forgive, but we also learn. We trust, but not blindly. When you love, but not foolishly, we protect our hearts, not just offer them on a silver platter to anyone who smiles at us. Islam commands you to forgive, but not to forget lessons. Islam advises you give people chances, but not unlimited passes. Islam encourages peace, but not pacifism at the expense of truth. You are not being less Islamic when you walk away from someone who repeatedly hurts you. You are not being harsh When you speak up against injustice, you are not being cold-hearted. When you set limits with people who drain your soul, that is courage, that is maturity. That is what true Islamic looks like. You see, some of the kindest people are also the strongest. Because they know their kindness is a gift and they don't throw it around loosely. They know their time, their love, and their trust is valuable. And they don't invest it in just anyone. They choose wisely. They give with purpose. They serve with sincerity, but never slavery. When you live like this, you're no longer afraid to speak the truth. You're no longer afraid to walk away. You're no longer seeking the approval of people who were never meant to be your standard. Your standard is higher. Your values are deeper. Your accountability is to Allah, not their opinions. And this is what true inner freedom feels like. Now think about this. The Prophet was offered kingship. He was offered wealth. He was offered power. All he had to do was be kind by staying silent about their idols. But he didn't. He said, even if they place the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, I will never leave this mission. That is the firmness Islam demands. That is the integrity Islam cultivates. So when someone says, if you're really a good Muslim, you'll just stay quiet. You tell them, if I'm truly a good Muslim, I'll stand for what's right. When someone says, don't be rude, just go along with it. You say, respect is not silence in the face of wrongdoing. When someone pressures you into compromising your principles for the sake of being kind, you remind them that the Prophet was never kind to falsehood. He was never polite to oppression. He never tolerated hypocrisy. He was respectful, yes, but he never sugar-coated the truth. And neither should you.